So we come to the fifth base. Remember that the fifth base operates differently than the other bases. That isn't to say that it is more important, more special, more this or that, or blah, 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 whatever. It simply has to do with the fact that the fifth base, as we'll see when we talk about the interrelationship between bases after the break this afternoon, we'll see that the fifth base has an unusual capacity to integrate with the other four bases. In other words, it's in the middle. And it's in the middle of that box of the other four. And in that sense, graphically, it is able to reach out and to connect to all of it. In the dimensional sense, this is space, and of course, this is simply illusion. I mean, it's the greatest illusion of all. Isn't it nice to see that the greatest illusion of all, and all puns intended, is who? After all, the who is the biggest illusion of all. It really is. It's enormous. Hey? The very name that heads this tells you of its position in its relationship to the other four bases. And it is this essential ingredient that brings together all of those other dimensional forces and gives them, in the very existence of the fifth base, an equilibrium and a platform to operate out of. In a sense, what we see through the fifth base is how everything else operates through it and how it impacts on everything else. And this is about nothing more than communication. In other words, this is about getting information, data, back and forth, back and forth, back and forth, constantly communicating. And one of the things to recognize about this power of communication is that the communication itself is the deepest mutative force we have. All fifth bases don't bring mutation, are mutation. They are mutative because they don't stand on anything. There's not even sand underneath their feet. You see, they exist as an interactive field of the other four dimensions. And only as a result of that. If you turn the cameras off, and there's no holographic beam going towards the center dissolves into nothingness. The illusion of who? Oh yeah. I hope you're all thinking. Think about what happens when the first base disappears. Oh yeah. We have a very, very different configuration. Instead of having the fifth base being in the center of four, it will be, in that sense, the fourth base in a center of three. And a very different mechanism will be at work in that triangle. And that triangle, in many ways, is an emblem of the force or the embodiment that we'll have. Communication is everything. It's everything. I mean, the spreading of the common cold, an essential communication. Pass it along. Make sure that everybody deals with it. Make sure that everybody's immune system can handle it. That's one less problem we got. Communicate it. Don't hold it in isolation. If you hold it in isolation, it becomes the most devastating weapon you can imagine. I mean, imagine you get to a point that there's no human body that's ever experienced cholera that's alive. Imagine. And then somebody releases cholera. Wow. It's all about communication. We like to be constantly informed. We like to be getting all of this stuff. I love CNN throws up the allergy map. You know, in huge swaths of America is sneezing. We're communicating. We're getting all of this stuff together, and so fast. Oh, it's fast. Oh, it's incredibly fast. You know, you go home, you turn on the TV, something else has happened. And everybody else is hearing about it, and we're all getting the communication. Now think about the name of this facet. It's subjective, after all. I mean, this is where all the problems are, right? You know, we're wandering around inside of here from our subjective positions, and we're communicating our subjectivity in all of these various directions. It's all about keeping us in tune, first of all, as a species, because it's absolutely essential. This binary for the facet. It's personality and it's space. Space is form, form is illusion, illusion is hearing, hearing is music, music is freedom. There's nothing more wonderful than a fifth bass song, because that's all it is. And there's some songs we like, and there's some songs we don't like, and there's some tunes we resonate to, and some tunes we don't. That making sound is communication. This is not about the throat center. It's about our capacity to be able to communicate, and we communicate in many ways. In the concepts of design, we know that we communicate through the throat, we communicate through the sacral. There are many ways in which we communicate with each other, and those ways include, you know, the bacteriological material that comes out of your mouth as you breathe that somebody else breathes in a room like this. It's not just the sound waves moving across the diaphragm of your ears. There's all this many levels that communication is taking place. And all of that communication defines the personality. Remember what I told you about the nature of human evolution and our direction as something that is going to transcend the very nature that spawned us. It's one of the things to see that this is about establishing the power of this larger, in that sense, personality. In other words, to be able to communicate outwards, like having atomic facilities that are sending neutrinos out there that are communicating at that level, the way I've described what we can do with the manipulation of the pheromones or all of these things, is to see that this communication, this is where it takes place. See, this is the field in which it's possible to be able to communicate not simply to each other, but to be able to communicate outwards. My brain, my physical brain, is directing all kinds of activity that's going on in my process right now. The movement of my head, the movement of my hands, the way in which my voice works, the amount of saliva that's available for all this stuff, all of that is at work. And the fact of the matter is that if my brain could not communicate with the rest of my body, I'm a vegetable. You know, nothing's going to happen. And you see, we have a body. It's a larger body. It is our role to be able to communicate to that larger body, to move the arm, to kick the leg, to stand up and walk, all of those things. You see, communication isn't just about the obvious, you know, turn on the TV, or the telephone call, or the newspaper, or whatever the case may be, the casual conversation. Communication is something that's very, very, very profound, and it's all pervasive. The whole thing about the Maya is that you take control of it by grasping it. You see, we're here to understand what communication is, how it works, and then to use it. And boy, do we ever. You know, the communication that you have between yourself through the keyboard to your computer and out into the whole wide process. All these communication gifts that we have that give us, you know, a greater and greater and deeper capacity to be fully networked in the illusion of the Maya. I mean, it is an illusion. We always have to have the illusion. After all, we're only crystals in meat. You know, our illusion makes up all the stuff about the rest of it. You know, that we're this and we're that, and there's this and there's that, and we do and we don't, and blah, blah, blah. We're just crystals in meat. You know, it is the whole that is greater than all of us that's actually something. You know, we're living out an illusion. That's the whole thing. I mean, you know, when I first met people who spoke spiritually, talked about all of these things, I would listen to that, and I would think to myself, what the hell are they talking about? I mean, what exactly are they getting at? What is this business they keep on saying that it's all an illusion? You know, that it's not real, that you're not really here, you know, blah, blah, blah. And I would look at that and I think, well, and of course, it's true. I mean, it's true. It is all an illusion. But it's only an illusion in the way in which we perceive it subjectively. I mean, that's the illusion part. You know, the way in which we describe all of this, life on earth, humans, blah, 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 all of this stuff. That's the illusion part. You know, and it's that illusion part that's there, yeah, to fool us. To fool us in going along with all of this business. I mean, to trick us. You know? Well, this is what it's all about. It's about being a human. You know, that's how we're fooled. And we're all fooled by the communication. And we're all fooled by the fact that what is communicated successfully can result in mutation. You see, the Maya is contagious. Isn't that nice? I mean, that's the whole thing. The Maya is contagious. And it's contagious because of the way in which it's communicated. And that communication is rooted in the subjectivity of how it's seen. The world is about this. You know. Oh, the world is flat. You know, oh, the world is about this. Oh, the world is about that. We're constantly reinventing our world. Don't you notice? I mean, it wasn't long ago that there was no such thing as a manifestor or a generator. We're reinventing the world all the time. We're reinventing the Maya all the time, simply by changing our perception, by seeing it differently. Because that's the curse of subjectivity. You know, you got your little slant. Everything about this fifth base is what makes it all work. It's what makes it all work. It gives us a way to develop and evolve into our proper roles. See, we don't have that at the very mundane level when you look, for example, at the genetic strain that's on the chromosome of yours. You know, I like to look at that picture and imagine that, you know, that gene standing beside the next gene, you know, the two of them looking at each other and saying, yeah, you know, I would really like to be up there on chromosome 7. The genes don't go through that. They just stand in line, they do their job, they bring the program. But you see, we are a macrocosm of that. And as a macrocosm of that, as a whole that's greater than the sum of all those parts, of all those genes that make us up, we're something else. And we have to see that we ourselves are caught in the same wheel. And that at some point we've got to get to the acceptance of our role in that. And it only works when we're so totally absorbed in a Maya that we understand. Not absorbed in a Maya that confuses us, that makes us suffer, that causes us pain. But you see, a Maya that we can make up, that says, hey, look, we understand who we are and why we're here. You get it? It's funny. It's a joke, guys. It's a joke. See, this is the way it works for us. Oh, relatively speaking, within the Maya, it's deadly serious. You will save yourself a lot of grief to live out your type. But type, as you can see, and this is the only time you see a direct reference to human design. When you look here at this quality, and you look here at this type, this is one of the great illusions. But it's an illusion that stands up statistically in the Maya. And you see, that's what we're doing. We're putting a new perspective on the Maya. You're not going to hear a lot of people on this planet talk the way I do. And see things and understand things the way they're seen through the matrix of human design. Because this is new. This is a mutation. And what this mutation actually does is it gives us a Maya we can live with. And we make it up. Oh, it's gorgeous. See, we're special. That's what we're here to be able to do. We can eventually get to the point that we can actually make it up. That we can manipulate the whole universe. And after all, it's our Maya to make up. And as long as it works inside of the Maya, it's as real as ever going to feel. Because this is our stage. See, it's beautiful. See, when the old masters sat there and they said to you, look, it's an illusion. Get it? It's an illusion. It's like, yeah, all right, what does he mean? All this stuff. We have the advantage of so much information, so much education, so many opportunities now to be able to grasp the basics of it. They have... In physics, physicists really turned me on. They're the only metaphysicians we've got left. And the physicists have a theory. It's called string theory. And I really love this theory. I love it because it's so funny. You see, what they postulate is that there's something that is so tiny that all of those tinies make up everything. Okay. So if you get down to the smallest little things, if you get past the atom and you get past the protons and neutrons and you get past the neutrinos, you're going to find that neutrinos are made up of a certain amount of string. Okay? That's string theory. Now look, what string theory actually says, and this is what I love, is that if you have one string, just one, it's so tiny, it's not there. Now, isn't that great? So here you have the physics community saying, look, if you put enough nothing together, you get something. It'd make an Atman guru cry. It's all an illusion. But we know that. It is. And yet it's the illusion that we have. It's the magic of it. And shit, if you still take life personally after that, you really got a problem. Because what are you going to do? You're going to fight in the illusion? What are you going to do? There's nothing you can do. All we can keep on doing is living out our program. Just living it out. By the way, an interesting thought that happened at lunch that I know that some of you would love to hear. If you come into the world and you have a design that's first base, right? Because I have talked about the first base personality and what happens to it at the end of the round. Anybody coming in with a first base design, that means that you're in the last model of that vehicle. Right? It's just something interesting to think about. Hey, it's the last model of that vehicle, and if you're really lucky, you can get an upgrade. I mean, you might go from a Ford to a Mercedes. You never know, but it's all illusion. Space. That sounds like the beginning of Star Trek. The final frontier. Yeah, I grew up with a different connotation of being spaced, you know. It's so magical. You know, this illusion. And that everything about our lives that gives it its richness is about the spaces in between. It's always about that. You know, it's the whole mystery. And it's something for us to be clear about in the nature of how we deal with the concept of personality. Only those of you that have taken the Great Course know that in fact what we call a personality crystal is in fact an illusion. I mean, an illusion within the illusion. That is, that what we call a personality crystal is a certain aspect of design crystal. It has nothing to do with personality. The totality, the biverse, isn't going to get a personality until the personality bangs into it. In other words, until the personality enters into the biverse from the outside, just as the personality enters into your vehicle or any creature's vehicle before it's born. So this whole business of personality is the deepest illusion of all. Of all. It doesn't change the fact that we relate to what we call our personality crystal as the soul or something deeply significant, because it is in fact. And its consistency through all of time is very important for us because it is the line that we travel, but it is a form principle at work. It is the so-called personality crystal that makes it possible for us to evolve into a form that actually can handle personality when it comes. In the same way that your design crystal in you, while you're a fetus in the womb, works very hard at getting ready to make it possible for the personality crystal to enter into the body. So this whole business of personality is an enormous illusion. I mean, it's an enormous illusion because we're never going to be the personality of anything. Joke's on us, folks. You know, we're going to be the eternal conscious vehicle. Because that's us. We are the eternal conscious vehicle. That's us. We are here to house the potential of awareness. We are here to be open to the embrace and take in the potential of true awareness. You see, when the personality crystal will come into the larger body, it will shatter. And in that shattering, everything will get an aspect of it. Just as the shattering from the beginning. And in everything getting an aspect of that, all forms of life will all participate in life with the same personality. I mean, with the same personality aspect. Only the designs will be different. Only the designs will be different. And after all, in the phase that comes and in the process that comes, not only will that design be different, but it'll be eternally fixed in its difference because it will not change. It will grow in the sense of its internal growth, or well, whatever we want to call that. It's hard for me to find terminology for something that is a good piece of illusion. It's the beauty of all this. See, I love the movie. Oh, I love the movie better than anything else. It's so incredible. You know, I recognize the helplessness of all of us. I watch my own helplessness in the world. I watch the way the world just moves. It's an incredible thing. And to see that all of that has a purpose, that it has a value, that it has a direction, that it's guided, that there really is an order, that there really is a process at work. And it's just our limitation that we can't grasp that and ride that and live the glory of that, because it's a great ride. You know, most of my fatigue with dealing with the public is that I'm tired of people having a hard time. I am, I must say, deeply, deeply tired of people having a hard time. I mean, I'm not a humanitarian. It's not my job. You know, this life is not about a hard time. I mean, it's human. You know, it has all the bullshit that's part of being human. But it's only when you identify with that, only when you make that personal, only when you think that this illusion actually means something, you know that you're burdened in this life. See, I never could have done this. You know, in the early years, people said to me, well, you should do satsang. You should just sit there and babble to people. I know how useless that is. Unless you can base it on something. You know, you can. You can see that it's all an illusion by accepting the illusion. Live your type. You know, accept the illusion. And then you'll see, yes, it does work. Oh, that's great. You know, this is the magic. It's all it is. But the moment that you're going to take all of this personally, oh my God. You know, I'm so glad I'm not responsible. You know? I'm glad I'm not responsible for being me. And I'm glad that I'm not responsible for you. I'm glad for all of that. And it's not about not caring, and it's not about looking at responsibility, and it's looking at it in the deepest sense. In the deepest, deepest sense. You know, we are all absolutely correct in our flow, in our movement. All we got to do is stop interfering with the Maya. And, you know, leave it alone. It's okay. You know, all you got to do is figure out how it works. That's all. When you figure out how it works, it's so easy to just go along with it. A relative of mine in Europe in the 30s was one of the first people to write intellectual discussions about the value of film as a genre. And one of the things that he wrote about that was so marvelous was what he called the suspension of disbelief. And this is the magic that takes place in the cinema. When you have a good movie, there's a moment in which no matter what nonsense they're going to do, no matter what it's all about, whether you're some science fiction thing out there in the middle of whatever, or whatever the case may be, there's this moment of the suspension of disbelief. That you surrender to the illusion in order to enjoy it. In order to come out of that theater saying, gee, that was a good movie. Not walking out and saying, and it really is so much like what life is itself. You have to suspend your disbelief. You see, the master recognizes that it's all an illusion, so what am I going to do? You know, so what? And the moment that you know it's an illusion, that's the moment you've got something you can do. It's not about saying, oh, it's terrible, it's all an illusion, it's not real, it's not. It's about saying, okay, how can I embrace this illusion? How can I embrace it? How can I be one with the world? How can I be one with this whole illusion and play? Because that's what it's all about. It's about being in it, deep in it, surrendered in it, watching. Just watching. I watch you all, I watch everything. There's nothing else for me to do. You watch. You see how things happen. You see what people do. You see how the world turns. It's not personal. It's not even voyeuristic. It's just there's nothing else to do. Because that's how you take the whole illusion and you make it your lover. You know, you take the warmth of the Maya, you coat it around you. I sound like the bloody devil, don't I? But it's what it's about. You take it and you take the whole thing. But you take it impersonally. You allow yourself to be taken into the flow of the river and away you go, and it's great. You can't do that until you accept the illusion, and you're never going to be able to accept this illusion until you can live out the quality of this dimension, which is living out your type. It isn't going to work any other way, because that is the way the Maya breaks down. And if you can live your type, you have surrendered to the Maya. And then you get a life. I mean, after all, you get the life that's for you. It's not the life that's for everything. I never forget, ever, 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 that everyone that I know, everyone that I don't know, is all processing the program. They're all making an essential contribution to the totality. And in many ways making contributions that are really quite profound without them ever, ever, ever having any notion of that whatsoever. That the program is designed in a way in which it recognizes that we are immature. You know, I don't want to be harsh today. That we're immature. You know, that we've got a ways to go. You know, and it will allow us slowly but surely to finally fall into this Maya so that we can complete in a conscious state what our contribution is. You don't get to see what you're here for until you're living out your nature in this Maya. Only then. Only then. You know, in all of the years in my life, before my experience with the voice, there was nothing there but the emptiness of struggling with existence. And you know, nobody in their right mind would have paid any attention to anything that I would tell them. You know, the embrace of the Maya, understanding how it works, everything changes. It doesn't get in the way. My design doesn't get in the way of me being able to commune and be able to have a relationship with each of you. Yet it's not my nature to be that way. But in embracing the Maya and embracing my design and my type, it brings me to that. It just does. And I accept it for what it is, because it's part of my movie. Everything about this fifth base is about bringing us to the theater of life and to the joy that the theater of life can bring us. You know, these moment-by-moment scripts that we're handed by the forces. You know, these moment-by-moment shifts and directions and programming information and this conditioning and that conditioning and all the stuff that's going on. What are you doing fighting in all of that? The enormous waste of resources in battling all of that. You know, it's just about accepting it. It's just about letting it be. So the quality of the fifth base is type, and that we know that type represents the deepest subjectivity as a division in humanity. I mean, we will come to see over the years, with research and with personal experience, that the perspective of generators, manifestors, manifesting generators, projectors, reflectors, they're all different. They're very, very different perspectives. You know, I think it was you, Tom, that mentioned that there's an unusual correlation here between the 5 different aspects of type, that is including the manifesting generator, and the 5 bases. And as I mentioned to Tom at the time, it's not that there is a direct relationship between them, but here in the fifth base, you can see that the whole process of type as a division within the way the Maya works is a grounding that comes out of this illusion. And it's an illusion that grows in time, after all. In other words, type has been many things in many ways over many years. You know, when I was first dealing with my book agent, she said to me, well, you know, this will be a type book. And I said, what the hell are type books? You know, and then she listed off all of these, you know, whatever, you know, this, you know, numerological divisions by type and psychological divisions by type and hot types and wet types and cold types. And, you know, there's all these different type systems. Type's been around forever. It's been forever. You know, the bad type, you know, the good type, you know, that goes back a long ways for us. So this is just a revision in that sense. But it is a revision based on being able to get to a point where we can mechanically measure the impact and the effect and the way in which the Maya works. If you can't measure the Maya, you can't surrender to it. You know, the closest connection that all of you have to the Maya is by watching the neutrino program. You know, that's the moment that you see, you have to see, you gotta be dead if you don't see that, you know, there's forces that are impinging on you, that are impacting on you, that are moving you, whatever the case may be. You know, this is the Maya at work. We're all in this. So the division of type becomes something very important. Out of that, you get the essential ingredient of personality. It is a magical ingredient. And that ingredient is presence. There are some people who, despite whatever their gifts, powers, or whatever it may be, that have no presence. You know, you don't really feel them. You don't really have a sense of them. You know, they're the kind of people that you always forget they were there at the party. You know, they're the ones you can't quite remember. They don't really have this presence. Presence. You have to see that one of the real gifts of type is that it provides you with presence. I mean, this is one of the most important byproducts of what type brings. You see, presence is about not being resisted, but being noticed. Remember that. It's not about resistance. You know, presence is always about some kind of attractive force that pulls you in one way or another towards something, someone, whatever the case may be. If you're a generator, and I speak of generators because they're the vast majority. If you're a generator and you're living out your type and you're waiting to respond, you naturally have presence. It's just there, and it will define you. In other words, the longer that you live out that process of being your type, the more and more in which you enrich in that sense or strengthen that sense of presence. In other words, you get noticed more. You will get noticed more because your energy is different. Your energy is actually in the flow. Your energy is actually, you know, one with the field that is around it. Remember that if we could take some kind of energy image of a human being that showed how much of them is dealing with resistance, and then you showed somebody who is simply living out their type, you would see that their resistance field is gone. And the moment that the resistance field is gone, what takes its place is presence. The ultimate illusion of presence, by the way, is a halo. Or in my case, horns. That's why I wear these hats, you know. That's to keep my personality crystal warm. You think? There's a wonderful connection between the fifth base and the third base. It's Voltaire, I think. I think, therefore I am. Here in the fifth base, with presence, we come to I think. You see, this is where we get to in our game with the Maya. In other words, I think. I think that this is the way the world is. I think that it's okay. I think that this is right. I think this is a table. I think this is a chair. I think this is the blah, 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 blah. It's not the same as the base where we explored mind. Because this is not about the construct of mind or brain system. This is the subjective field that's a byproduct of all the other four fields. And out of that comes what we call in the illusion thinking. We think we're thinking. One of the things that human beings are most possessive about is their thinking. Remember when we looked at the second basin, we were looking at the creation of environment, building the houses, and in order to be able to give ourselves an inner world as opposed to an outer world, and that's the beginning of the whole mind process, that one of the things about thinking is that you think that what you think, first of all, is yours, that it's private, that nobody can get in there for that, blah, blah, blah. And in that, you're very possessive of those thoughts. As a matter of fact, the most common way in the cliche to access that is actually to try to pay for it, even though it's an insult. Penny for your thoughts? I mean, it's private business. You can't even ask for it, because the only way you actually ask for it where it's not money is you say, what's on your mind? Which is a very funny expression. This thinking, it's what we do, but it's not ours. And it's the most difficult thing. If you're somebody like me, and you're very lucky, you have a totally unconscious mind, you really know that thinking isn't yours. I mean, you know that. I don't know where this stuff comes from. I have no idea. I never have. I mean, you've been watching me for years. I have no notes. I don't know what the hell I'm doing. It's blah, 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 blah. I can't say that's my thought. I mean, I can only say that if I'm trying to resist the Maya. If I'm trying to resist all that illusion, you're not in charge of what you think. You're not in charge of what you think any more than what you are. It's just what goes through. And any presumption that you have that you're initiating the thought so that you can solve the problem is an incredible joke. It's just what's happening. I have those moments with my mind when I'm going to sleep at night, where the damn thing wants to talk about something that I don't care about, I don't want to hear about, don't need to know, and off it goes. And it's in moments like that where you recognize your helplessness. It's just helpless. I'm not in charge of what I think. It's not up to me whether it's going to come through or not, or what it is, or, it's always been a favorite expression of mine to call myself a biofax machine. I mean, we're all biofax machines, operating in the neutrino program, bioing away. Only the illusion protects us from the cold reality. And it's a very cold reality, and the illusion is so warm. And you see, the moment that you can come to grips with your nature within the Maya, then, you can find the warmth in this life. It isn't such a big deal. We are able to move along in it, to flow in it, to have it work for us, because we're designed for that, after all. But that means that you've got to get to the point where you stop seeing that so many things are important. I mean, there's all these things that people think are important. I mean, they really do. In the illusion, in the Maya, those are the traps. Those are the places where you just get dragged down. I think. So thinking is our greatest illusion, and it's our most important tool. It means that through this illusion of thinking, we are able not simply to communicate basics, I'm in heat, or I'm in trouble, or I'm going to take you, or blah, 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 all those basic things. Through thinking, we get to a point that we have the evolution of communication. In other words, we get to the point where we're at now, in which we have this incredibly sophisticated formats for communication, for exchanging ideas, thoughts, concepts, however we want to phrase that. And it's this thinking aspect that you can see, take it away from us. Remember, the fifth base isn't human. It integrates with the human base. But it isn't per se human. It's about the totality. The totality thinks. The totality is what it's all about. And it means that whatever we're a part of is ultimately going to be a thinking consciousness, a communicative consciousness. It means it's not something that's here to come into a world where it will be alone. It will not. Whatever it is, whatever it might be. Because on the macrocosmic level, you can see that, that's why we have this sense of a God creator, being created by intelligence. We are intelligence. We are all of that. But as a whole, as a totality, and we're the God, not the other way around. Once we are the whole, we are the totality. That's the whole point. You see, the gene long ago has given up any sense of its independence. We haven't. We still don't have a uniform personality. We still do not have a way in which we all understand that we're in the same business together. Getting there is our communicative trial. Getting there is trying to get this information across. That's what we have to do. This continual communication, constantly letting people know. I do that with the updates. I keep on pumping it out. Constantly keep people informed. Constantly keep them connected, because communication is mutative. And that the mind is a great instrument of mutation. A great instrument of it. Thought. The mother says, I am. But the illusion says, okay, we're a package. We're crystal and meat. Okay. But, we need a who. You always need a who. You need a way in which to be able to identify and fix a subjective being. And the way in which you do this is not what, this is not when, this is not where, it's not how, it's who. And you know what that who brings you? It's so cute. Names. Names. It's all about names. You see, if you don't have a name, you don't exist. You just don't. You don't exist. Not in the context of the Maya. We know that there's people's, there are odd occasions and things. But you see, it begins with the naming. And this is all personal. It's all about being. It's all about what we call anthropomorphization. In other words, that who, we extend that who into things that are far greater than the person across the room from you. Who are they? What was their name? This is one of the basic things of communication, is that somebody has to have a way of calling you. You can't have a whole planet that's called Hey You. It would be very confusing. See, we have to have names. I don't know if you can really grasp how significant that is, because that's the whole joke of the Maya. The moment you give it a name, it exists. It's this guy here in the States that sent out requests for credit cards from his dog. And the dog got approval. Give them a name, and suddenly they're in the Maya, and they get treated like everybody else in the Maya. Isn't that a delight? It's an incredible joke. You know. And I mean, masters know. So many of them have played naming games. Change people by changing their names. I mean, you know, Osho, that was a prime part of his package. And you really change somebody when you change their name. I know what happened to me when my name changed. You know, you're getting called by a different service. You know, and you respond. I mean, think about what a name does for you, you know? You know, you're in a restaurant and somebody shouts to somebody else and they're calling out what happens to be your name. Boy, everything inside of you jumps. They're calling me. You know? I'm up in the movie. It's magic. I learned that a long time ago. You see, I give names to everything. I give names to my cars and my toys and guitars, machines, and they all have nicknames. See, you give a name to something and it fits into the Maya right away. I mean, after all, what is the nature of advertising but coming up with a brand name? Boy, if you can come up with a brand name, you're a success. You have managed to find the right way to get into the Maya and take advantage of it. And it's all in the names. You know, there are people running around now paying fortunes for .com names that a few wiseacres were able to, you know, yeah, let's take a couple of these just in case. I mean, names are everything. You know, after all, one of the things that is most disturbing to young children is name calling. All that stuff. And you see, it all starts here. And it has to do with the nature of our language, what we call something, and how we see something. That it's out of that arises so much conflict in our lives. And you see, the moment that you can understand who you are in the Maya, and when you can understand who somebody else is in the Maya, then you can live with them. You just can. It's an astonishing thing. Because you see, you can give a name to what you like, and you can give a name to what you don't like, and it makes it all acceptable. Because you know they can't do anything about it anyway. But you have to be able to give a name to it. I always felt that funny thing with this person. Aha, now I know why. And it's okay, I understand how that works. Now I know why. I know who they are. I know who I'm dealing with. See, I love my work. In the nature of my work, I deal with many people, and I deal with many people professionally. I know who they are. At least I know who they are in terms of their design. So I know what is, for me, okay, what isn't, what works, what doesn't work. And you see it right from the beginning. And so what? You know, the moment that you see all that, you can let go. You can let go of interfering in all of that. You can let go in, you know, trying to correct somebody. And this who business is very, very important to us. We need to know who we are. If we don't know who we are insecure. And of course, that's why the Maya is so uncomfortable, because everybody is running around in the Maya not knowing who they are, living out the not self, being deeply conditioned and in desperate search of, hopefully trying to find out who they are. What a different movie that is. You know, when we get to a point in which the fifth base as it operates is operating through people who are honoring their type, we don't have that same dilemma at work. And you see, everything about all of these bases ultimately, with the potential exception of the first base, is all about finding some way to cooperate. You know, whether that's sexual cooperation or, you know, whatever the thing is, at least finding some kind of way in which we can work and operate together. You know, whether it's about manipulating others to get them involved with you or all of these various aspects. And so it's very important to see that that's one of the major themes inherent in the whole structure. That mechanically, despite all of the setup that we have of our assumed separateness, the illusion of our difference, all of this stuff. We're constantly being forced to come to grips with each other, to find ways in which we can cooperate with each other. That real cooperation begins with knowing who somebody is. And you can see already how that works. I mean, in the formal environment of meeting somebody, you're told, this is Mr. Smith, whatever. If you get to know Mr. Smith and maybe Mr. John Smith and maybe eventually John, if you know them really well, and maybe Johnny, in other words, that whole naming business carries all kinds of different import, and it allows you a deeper access to that person. Much deeper. I mean, my mother calls me Bobby. That's a name. It rings its bell. That's a Maya I remember, and I remember Bobby in the Maya. All those names are so important. What we call things. This is where the problem of morality and language is so devastating. The conversations I've had with you about things like the 58-2, you got a word like perversion, or 54, you got a word like corruption. All of the moralistic garbage that goes with interpreting what that actually means. And it's one of the things for us to see is that until you get to a point where you know who you're dealing with, you're ruled by your moralities. You just are. You do not and cannot truly accept the other without knowing who you are and knowing who they are. And then it's possible. Then it's possible. That's real progress for us in terms of our humanity, but it means that we have to come to that point from a subjective perspective. We have to come to that point through thinking. We have to come to that point through communicating. So I must communicate with you the premises in order to start your thinking process, in order ultimately that we can have a mutation. It's the way in which it works. The sense is hearing. And this is truly the illusion of God itself. After all, I heard the voice. These are all illusions. But you see, given the limitation of what we are, we have to find ways to frame things. The step-down energy of the forces that were communicating with me, I experienced that in the only way that I was capable of in that sense. But it was acoustic. That is, it was mostly acoustic. In the beginning is the Word. It's like the very first thing is God talking. Okay, let's create a universe.